Welcome back to Rise and Tell with Sheekha. I am Sheekha Singh, your host and author. I have got something special to share. My brand new book, Unburnable Ambition: How Overachievers Win Without Burning Out, is coming on Jan 5th, 2026. This book is for all of us who dream big but refuse to let burnout be the price. If you'd like early chapter, preview, and launch bonuses, head to shikhasingh.com/unburnableambition and sign up today. Now let's dive into today's episode. Today, I have a wonderful guest with me, David McKee. David is not just an author, a businessman, and a coach, but he's also a really self-aware person. If there's one thing that I've learned after this interview with David, it was the fact that he puts in the work to find out what's not working, and he puts in all the effort and energy to make himself better than he was yesterday. He loves working on himself, and that shows. And that's being a true coach, not just telling people what you got to do, but you implementing those ideas and those suggestions yourself. David McKee is the founder of Another Angel Consulting, a global advisory firm dedicated to helping individuals and organizations achieve breakthroughs through the integration of psychology, neuroscience, and mindset coaching. His journey is deeply personal and is shaped by his own family's mental health challenges and a profound desire to understand human behavior. He's obsessed with learning why people do certain things the way they do it. And in addition to coaching and his advisory work, he's the author of a mindset book that bridges the scientific principles with everyday practices. David and I spoke about diminishing attention span. His favorite chapter in the book revolves around social media and how your feed affects what you think. So let's get started. Today we have with us David McKee. Welcome to our show, David. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great.
Of course, of course. It's our pleasure. And I am excited to know and learn some things from you today because everything that you teach about, everything that's in your book is highly relatable, one. And second, it's something that everybody experiences. And I'm interested to know your point of view on those. So,
Yeah, let's go.
yeah, let's just dive right in. I'm going to ask you, David, how did you go about starting your own business? When was that point, or what was that moment for you when you decided, okay, I'm going to become a coach and I'm going to start a business?
So, yeah, everything on the coaching side, I actually started my own consulting company back in 2014. And it was out of necessity. I had an injury and I was on workers' comp. And I just realized or found out recently that I have ADHD. But at the time, I didn't know that I was going through that. So after 2 days of being on workers' comp, and there was they kind of estimated 2.5 to 3 years that I'd be in that process or longer. After 2 days, I had cabin fever and I had to figure out something to do. So I worked in accounting. And what I figured out was I went to local mom and pop businesses that probably couldn't afford a bookkeeper. I've been around the town, they're like not always that busy. I wanted to help teach them about finances and be able to go through things like that. So I helped become a bookkeeper for a lot of businesses within the town and towns that I lived in and worked around. And from there, it kind of developed into I started working in music. And as I started in music, I started fusing psychology and neuroscience into that process.
Oh,
And
nice.
it helped me thank you, jump into working with a bunch of different artists who were dealing with a writer's block or depression, burnout, any of those type of issues that if they were on some type of timeline, songs work a lot like project management does, that the song
Mm.
goes through the process of what you're doing. And if there's a lag in the process and it's not moving forward and it's the artist's fault,
Oh.
whether you're a label or a higher up, whoever is in charge of that, you start putting pressure on the artist. And I thought that there was a window there. I grew up performing and singing, and I know creatives think a little bit differently, that you can't just apply force and expect things to get done. It will work for some, but not most.
Right.
And with a lot of creatives, they're almost like turtles. So you can't really push creatives to get a result. If you have a deadline or you're behind on something, you have to find a way to really get through to them There's an old Teddy Roosevelt quote that I think it was Teddy Roosevelt that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I found that niche in that business that, okay, a lot of musicians needed that. They needed that go between so that there wasn't that pressure and that I could talk to whoever was running the project or the song or the album of what was going on. And I was just essentially the go between of making sure things got done and moved across. And the more I did it, the more I used psychology and neuroscience type little tips and hacks. And everyone just kept telling me, they're like, we love this. And they would just, I wasn't using any marketing money. I didn't have to market myself at all. I was just getting referrals just based off the connection and the things we were able to kind of accomplish. So it really was something that was not intended, but it grew into something pretty beautiful. And then that's led me to coaching CEOs and employees really within the same thing is that sometimes if you run a business, anyone who, or if you've been a manager, you could have a high performing employee who works well under you. And for some reason, after maybe 2 to 3 months, they're not performing at that same level. And you just expect them to get back, and it doesn't quite get there. Those are the types of things that I say if we can write it down or acknowledge that, and you know, oh, they're acting a little different. You should know that on almost a day to day, week to week, not a year to year, and be
Right.
able to kind of see the signs. And when you see something, be able to say something and try to approach it and find ways. So I've started working with businesses that to essentially help them before an employee could become an issue or just go down that road of unproductivity. Usually it's a lot of, hey, this is happening at the house. My daughter's sick or whatever's going on. And a lot of people don't like to bring that into work. So they will hide it. And it's like that if your employer knows that, your manager knows, more often than not, you're going to have people who really do want to help and want to like take that next step because they've already trained you and they brought you up. And if you're a good performer, there shouldn't be that fear that they're just going to cut bait. It could happen, but you've got to really just go with the mindset of, hey, I've done what I need to do. Let me be my full self. And by cutting yourself off and I always say filtering of if you filter what you say and what you really feel around people, you're not being yourself. And
Correct.
that's what you're going to attract with, I'm big into frequency and stuff like that, that if you're on the same wavelength of frequency, that's what you're going to attract. And if you're being less of yourself, that's what you're attracting. So is that the life you want, or do you want to really be at a life where you're attracting the highest of what you think is your best self?
Oh, I agree 100%. And that's amazing, David. I think that journey of yours that you just explained is wow, there's a lot in it. So we'll
Thank you.
touch a little bit on the fact that you mentioned how creatives work differently, how they're wired differently, and
Mm,
they kind of go into a shell. And that kind of translates to writer's block too. And you said you help people who've gone through that. So I would love to know
mhm,
the top two tips of how or what do you suggest to people who've been amazing, again, great, they used to love
mm.
writing, they used to love doing a certain thing, they used to love making music, but now there's this big block which ended up being days, then weeks, months, and now it's been years. So how
Yeah.
do you what would you tell to someone like that?
Well, I'll tell you what I did with my first client. And it wasn't,
Sure.
they weren't intended to be a client, but it was a country music singer who had a big following as a kid and
Okay.
didn't really follow that through as an adult. And that's how I started working with musicians that I got connected through a friend of a friend, and they were the manager to this artist. And they
Oh,
reached out and they had talked to me. We had met at parties before and had some conversations. And they said, they're like, I think you might be able to get through to him. That like she's like, I'm too close. It's like I'm a friend. And like when you are very close family friends, that same thing you filter. You don't always say the whole truth because you don't want to hurt the people you love.
yeah.
And so that's where she was at, and she was very honest about it. And I jumped in and he and I had a phone conversation for about 2 hours. And we just kind of like laid out what was everything that was the worst of what brought this on. Because usually there's some type of traumatic event or whatever. And if they're open to talking about it, getting into it, whether it's to somebody else or journaling, write out everything that's bothering you
Right.
because it's going to connect to your limiting beliefs and holding yourself back. And that if you can really get it all out, it's cathartic. That, like, as you read it through, you can read something. And it's weird that even though it's in us and it's the words that come from us and we write it down on the paper, when you then read it and internalize it, it, it strikes you differently and it makes you realize, okay, like that's not okay, that it's like
Right.
some things you might have justified or seen the good because of whatever reason, rose colored glasses type stuff.
Yeah.
It really does help kind of strip away of, oh, That's the words, and you can't really deny or run from that. So it's a great stuff to be able to do a self check, and then from there, a little similar to what we mentioned before of going through what they used to do when they were
Right.
successful. So we really
Right.
like dug in, and that was a little different because it was kid to adult. So it's not always easy to say be a kid again. You That's
Yeah.
not realistic. So what we did is like just trying to find common things that made him happy and like what he
Mm.
liked to do, whether that was music or anything, finding the joy in life again. And then from there, unwinding it of what can you do? And then what were you doing when you're successful? What were you doing now that isn't that?
Yeah.
Find those differences. And then I try to do, Lewis Howes came up with it years ago, the perfect day exercise, that how can they build to the perfect day to get to that point?
Mm.
And there's a really like strange correlation, but it's a strong correlation with the sample that I've used is that as we move those artists onto one plane, they really take that next step. And it's just been so cool to see the progression of when they can do that perfect day and as they start easing into what that's going to be, the
Right.
music starts flowing and the ideas start coming again for writing. And it's because they're working towards something, working towards a goal. And you can't always make that a career because if you're out of work, it's hard to do that. And not everyone can be an entrepreneur. But
Yeah.
it's just one of those things of where can you find your joy and where can you work towards something? If it's a vacation, for me, vacations are a big thing. But I say you could just do it in yourself. Create a perfect day. What would be perfect locally without spending a lot of money? What could you do that would make it a perfect day? And for me, I could sit at the beach all day and I'd be totally fine. I don't need anything else. So when you can find that, it's then lean into that, and then you're working towards, okay, in 3 months, I'm going to have that perfect day, and I'm working towards it. I'm doing a couple hours at a time, but I'm going to get to do it all day. And it just unlocks parts of the brain that are stuck in that negative pattern and loop of negativity, scarcity, and fear. And it really helps you open up to possibilities and what can be for what you're doing.
Wow, those are two solid suggestions and two solid tips, David. I love it because I'm a big, big believer in writing stuff down. I feel like the minute you put things onto the paper is when things get real. And
Yeah.
now you've actually made it real. And there's something in you that's saying, okay, just take that checkbox. You have to do it and you have to finish it. And
Yeah.
second, yes, maybe it takes a lot of time, but like you said, what were some of the things that you used to do when the first thing was a hit, or when like I think during that journey people forget what that high felt like or
Yeah.
what that joy felt like the minute you picked up your first book. When it was shipped to you, you saw
Hmm.
it like real, your dream come true. And I think over the years it just kind of fades, and then you have to go back and remember, oh wow, yeah, I want that feeling again, and I
Yeah.
want to feel that happy and proud again. So yeah, those are two solid suggestions, David. I would love to touch on your book.
Okay.
I know you're an author and you've
Yeah.
written an amazing book. Tell us something about it.
Sure. It's called Navigate the Noise. It's all about mastering your mindset. And I realized that when I started working with musicians, that was one age range that was really affected by COVID. And
Yeah.
the more I looked into it and did some studies, middle school to high school, those kids were affected on another level, that they didn't get the sense of normalcy most of us got growing up. And it really set them back, especially just attention spans alone, when everything became very heavy with YouTube shorts and Instagram reels
Yeah.
and TikToks. It took, I think the average like attention span prior to COVID starting was like 33 or 34 seconds in that ballpark. And I think it was like a year and a half into COVID, it was down across the thing to like
Yeah.
28, 29 seconds. It's like 4 to 5 seconds just because of that social media feed, which that leads into so much of people don't really own their failures on social media. Some do, but so many, it's this level of perfection that is just not real or not attainable for a lot of people. And I really dig into, especially anyone working with me, we try to change everything of like watch what you're liking and what you're interacting with, like what videos you
Mm.
watch and everything, because I was like, that's going to be a reflection of what you're watching is what you see in the world. It's the
Yeah.
whole reticular activating system in your brain,
Yeah.
the whole car theory, the red car theory of when you're looking for something, you actively see it. So
Right.
it's really great of if you could put people on that path, it really gets them going, and then they can start seeing the results. Um, and then when you have that one kind of bit of success, because like every time when you start something new, you have that bit of anxiety or that bit of a pull of, and I was always a internal speaker and limiting belief type person. I always ran through my head, you can't do it, you failed, this never works. And I really like thought back to it. And when I wrote that down, like we were talking about earlier, I actually wrote that down. I'm like, I'm not a failure. I was like, if I asked any of my friends, they would say I'm one of the bigger successes they know. So
Yeah,
it's really that simple. But we all are very like if you haven't worked on yourself and you haven't like really dug into loving yourself,
yeah,
it makes it really hard to really go through everything else. And then that's similar to also what we were talking about before, is that if you keep filtering yourself down and you keep liking things because other people like it, or you do
yeah,
things because other things like it, you become more like them and it's not really your authentic self. And
right.
I'm big on the authenticity of artists, whether it's musicians, actors, any type of art, in my opinion, books, true, is that
Yeah.
you can step out and like make somebody feel something. And when you can do that, you're on a different level of what you can really accomplish.
Yeah, I agree. You're like touching on all my favorite topics. I love talking about the attention span.
Let's go.
Yeah, now I think it's down to like 7 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's insane to me that people cannot hold anything for more than 7 seconds or listen or watch, no
Hmm.
matter how amazing the graphics are or what it is. What's wrong with people? I mean, again, I don't want to say,
Yeah.
offend anybody, but I enjoy sitting and reading.
Yeah.
And to finish a 200 page or a 400-page book, you need to have that
Hmm.
attention span.
Yeah.
And it's insane. Like, my mind is blown when I hear people saying now it's even decreasing to even a shorter period of time. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
what happened? And when did this happen? Because I'm here, I'm living, I still have books that I can
Hmm.
hold and I can read. And wow, it's insane. But I also noticed that the way the world is changing, there are
Hmm.
certain people who struggle because they do want to read more, they do want to pay attention more, they want to become their better selves and better
Yeah.
versions of what they are. So there are certain people of that, likes too, where they want to be better and they're trying, but it's that distraction,
Hmm.
the whole world. I think it starts with discussions with your friends or your family. The minute
Hmm.
I go to meet any of my friends, the first thing that comes up is, "Oh, did you watch that movie? Or did you watch that series?" And I'm
Hmm.
like, "No, I was reading." And I don't want to, like, nothing. I love all the artists, I love all forms of art, but I
Hmm.
feel like we trying to cater to that diminishing attention span is not okay, at least with me. But
Yeah.
again, to survive, to market your product or your service, you have to do that, which is unfortunate. But yeah, that's just insane to me. And my blood just starts to boil whenever, I see people just, okay, next, next, next,
Yeah.
next.
And the
It's
crazy thing, and you talking about binging shows in that realm. I'm not going to say what streamer, but one of the biggest ones. Um, they actually ran tests, and then they started producing shows based off sample studies that they took, a whole psychology kind of session
yeah.
of, can they follow along with this? How much can they follow along with this while they're on their phone? So they designed shows that you
Mm,
could literally, you don't have to be watching every second, that you can be interacting while on your phone. And that's what they're starting to make shows based off that,
wow.
that it's all data that you're going to run to. And that's where, like, coming from someone like me, I was one of those people who had trouble reading. And I thought it was like a me issue that I didn't realize until like it's embarrassing, almost like 15 years ago, that an internal monologue wasn't just a me thing. Being able to unwind when I had my ADHD, so I know that now, but like my thoughts would race. I would read a book and got to like a really important part, and then my phone would ring, and then I'm like, okay, who just texted me as I'm trying to read? And then
Yeah.
I noticed I would get to like 2, 3 pages later, and I was actively reading. My mind was going through it as I would normally read, but my brain was in such overdrive that I wasn't filtering what I was actually reading. I was taking
Yeah.
in none of it, even though I was
Yeah.
going through it. And then I realized recently I'm really into meditation now, and I always thought I couldn't do it because after like 30 seconds I would start getting all
Yeah.
the intrusive thoughts and like everything just kind of flying. And I got coached by someone who really put it in a simple way. that he's like, are you that arrogant that you can do it great after one time? He's like, meditation's work. He's like, it's like working out. It's like a muscle. So he's like,
Yeah.
if you pray, if you manifest, if you meditate, however you want to get to that type of level of mindset, it lets you, I realize now the beauty in a lot of stuff of being able to slow stuff down. I was in
Mhm.
such high cortisol, constantly always trying to get stuff done, and that led to so much burnout. I didn't realize that what I thought was normal was a really stressful life. And
Exactly.
it's like stress is just, I think that that's the biggest indicator with that attention span is you watch the news, you are going through everyday life with inflation and all these crazy things that are happening in the world. Wars are going on, and everyone is like this. Everyone's just like ready to explode on somebody because they're just taking in news constantly.
I agree, yeah. But David, tell me, you touched on the different points that you've added in the book and the
Mhm.
reasoning behind it. What's your favorite part or favorite chapter?
Ooh. So I don't want to like rehash too much of what we just talked about, but I do a whole social media chapter of going
Oh,
into what happened during COVID and then showing the differences of helping teach, especially kids and parents of teenagers and in this kind of age range, if you're
right.
middle school to high school, that you can restart the algorithm and start from scratch again. And that if there's a lot of stuff, if like a parent opens up and sees, hey, like there's a lot of stuff I don't want here, or even a kid saying, I don't relate to that anymore, that you can restart your algorithm and start that again. And I like them to say, is like, this is a blank canvas again. So when you're starting here, what you watch for more than 10 seconds, what you interact, like, send a message about, send to your friends, do whatever. That's what's going to keep recycling onto your feed. So as like that,
Yeah.
you realize what you're taking in, and for a lot of time, I was kind of just like all over the place. Very like I love sports. I loved a little bit of everything. Very entertainment based, and would watch shows all the time, like you were talking about. And it's crazy that I've been able to unwind so much of that, and I realized it was just a stress response. I was really just trying to get cheap dopamine hits constantly, and that's what binging a
Yeah.
show is. And so a lot of that in that chapter was so cool. I learned so much that it made me realize that I was like, I have to change what I do on social media and like go through. I wasn't doing anything bad, but it's just like, whoa. I was like, it's when you realize how soft some of these things are, and like going into stuff that the alcohol effect on the brain compared to what else.
Yeah.
You if you find out why people react slower to things and like have their issues or have whatever type of sicknesses or diseases, it a lot of it is all stress related, and your body is the quickest healer of itself and can produce a pharmacy of chemicals in your body that is stronger than anything a pharmacy could actually give to you. So
Right.
it's something that's natural, it's within your body, and it's just one of those things going through the placebo effect of if you have this powerful thought of, okay, I was diagnosed with something, I'm going to get better. The progress that happens with people who just believe that it's going to go well instead of believing it's going to go bad.
Oh, I agree. The thoughts are so important. What you think, how you think it, and how you
Mhm,
put it out. I am a big believer in all those things because I've seen the changes in myself and I've seen the changes in my partner too. Like, we used to talk about things that we have now, and we used to talk about having a certain kind of lifestyle, and we are actually doing this now, and we didn't even realize it.
mhm,
But when we just sat down at a bar or something and we were talking, I'm like, wait, do you realize that we used to talk about having, such nights or such kind of lifestyle, and we're actually doing it now? So yes,
mhm,
that's very important. But on the other hand, I have seen people who constantly crib and constantly complain about things, even though they have everything around them. They'll have
yeah,
a nice car, they'll have a good house, they'll have a job, a roof on their head, wonderful family, wonderful partner. And yet, every time I talk to people like that, I see those, and I know you touched on
yeah,
vibrations and,
mhm,
wavelength and all that. I see it because it's so evident when you meet a negative person and you meet a really happy, genuinely energetic person. It's so
mhm,
different because I feel you're like a mirror. It
yeah,
reflects. If the other person is really chirpy, happy, energetic, you're going to feel that too. And all
mhm,
it takes is a just a simple greeting in a wonderful tone. And I've
yeah,
seen that happen because I work for a remote company, and when we
mhm,
log in, join any meetings, the first thing is I we just see everybody's faces like this much,
yeah,
right? The size
mhm,
of a small thumbnail. And let's say if it's been a very long day and it's a 3 o'clock meeting, 3:30 meeting, everyone's battery is down because obviously it's the slump. But the minute someone joins the call and they're like, hey, everybody, how's it going? Or,
Yep.
it's like Friday, what are your plans? Everyone's like, I can see the differences in everyone's faces, and it just lights up. And the
Hmm.
same thing when you have a negative person. I mean, not negative, but then if their energy is really low and they come in, okay, today we're going to talk about this, that, oh, that didn't work, this didn't work, we are behind schedule and there's no deadline and there's escalations. It's so easy to read the room when the energy is just drained out, and those kind of
Hmm.
people suck the energy out. Even if you are this happy-go-lucky person and you've come with all the energy, but then the other person like, I hate my life,
Yeah.
nothing's going well. So yeah, I agree, those are very important things, and it starts with thoughts and
Yeah, there was this.
thinking.
If you don't mind, I would have loved to
Ooh,
share. There's this study that came out. I think it was like 6 years ago or so, but it was they had two groups of people, and literally they were just sorted as essentially the sample groups were people who naturally thought positively, and then
right,
people who naturally thought negatively. So you just had both sides of the room. They were each given the same exact thing, and it was this newspaper, and then they were told go through. It was like a newspaper magazine. They're like go through the entire thing, count how many pictures there are on here, and
right,
when you're done, put the book down and let us know what the number is. So they all start doing it. As they go through, there's a group that is all putting their things down pretty quickly. And
right,
then everyone else you see still rifling through, going through it all. And it was very evident that it was the people who thought positive
right.
saw what was on page two, which on page two, there was a big headline that said, stop reading right now. There's 36 pictures in this thing. You don't need to do any more. That's it. You can stop. And so they did that. And it was the study pretty much showed almost like 100% across the board. I think it was like wild that the people who thought positively saw that thing on page two, and the people who thought negatively went all the way to the end and didn't
Oh,
and didn't catch that. So it was, and it works, I think, very similarly to if you ever were called on in school when you were younger, you're reading all in class, you're all reading in history or English,
yeah,
and everyone's taking turns at a time, and you
yeah,
get called on unexpectedly, and it's that fear that you get. Your focus and your vision narrows, that you only see
correct.
when you're stressed out, you only see that you have blinders on, you can't see around you. Whereas
Mm.
when you're cool, calm, and collected, and in a norm, like in your zone and in flow state, you see the entire room. So the people who thought positively just had bigger views of focus to what they could see. So just thinking positively gave them all that advantage of what they could do.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
That's wonderful. Okay, so David, you talk a lot about growth and confidence and being. I know you said you love talking about authenticity and you're a big promoter of that. How can I know I've seen this being a leader myself and being in the industry for over 11 years? And how many ever people that I meet, there are still certain people who believe in people pleasing, and that's just their kind of style. And in somewhere down the line, when they continue doing that, they lose their authentic self. They don't even know who they are if they stop people pleasing. And to me, I never did it, but when I saw somebody doing it, it was a huge eye opener.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, people do this? Like, I had no idea.
Hmm.
So, what would you suggest to people who want to stop people pleasing, but
You
they
got it.
just can't?
So it's a multiple things that you can do, but I can tell you I was a former people pleaser, and recovering people pleaser, as I like to call it. I didn't even know I was doing that,
Right.
truly, like 100%. And it was like 7 years ago or so. I was at work on location, and we're in a group chat, like a bunch of people were all talking in a room, and someone who's like a pretty good friend of mine says, and I'm a people pleaser, like self-acknowledging. And she's like, and I'm a people pleaser. And she's like, Dave, you know what I'm talking about. You are too. And I was like, and I immediately shot and was like, no, I'm not. But it was the glass that shattered that actually, like, I thought about it. I'm like, yeah. And I was in my 30s as to when that happened, that I got called out on that. And as I did the research into it and wanted to find out why, I'm very hyper obsessed with why am I the way I am? And like, how can
Right.
I figure out to be my best self, healthy or health wise, everything, brain wise of what you're going through. And yeah, watching that I was this people pleaser, and
Yeah.
I wasn't my most authentic self. And I had a lot of things that went wrong in my past earlier life because I wasn't being authentic, and it was the universe trying to tell me, "Hey, like change." And I kept, and I'm a big believer is that we go through a lot of cycles, and it's
Yeah.
we talked about somewhat similar to what you were saying before. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was like, it's breaking cycles. It's finding ways of when people are in that negative loop pattern, how can you break it as quick as possible? And one of the cool things I shared in the book, in a little bit more detail than this, but on a quick level, the same part of the brain that controls all the nasty emotions, I like to call them, the fear, anger, sadness, stubbornness, frustration, anger, any of that, depression, and is the same part of the brain that processes being grateful. So
Yeah.
when you were talking about having those moments of like that moment when you felt when you read a certain book or like got to like the story and you were just blown away, that feeling you have, like you just have this, I want to share it with someone, I want to talk about it. Like it's like you just get that giddiness. And I talk about it as like if you grew up, had a holiday with family growing up, that like it's you just always remember those type of things. So if you can get to one of those feelings, and if
Mhm.
you have kids or whatever you're grateful for, truly just try to find something that really gives you that heartwarming feeling. If you can start breaking once you start in that any of those negative emotions, if you're thinking or feeling that, and just what am I grateful for? And it took me a while, but I treated it like a gym exercise. Bless you. I treated it like a gym exercise, and I'm competitive. So I was like, all right, how can I make it this a game? And I realized that when I would kind of have an off setting, or if I was going off, it would be for like a minute or two. And then I'd be fine. Like it was
Right.
just like I'd throw me off, but for that little bit. And I started then timing it. I'm like, all right, can I do 45 seconds? Can I do 30? Can I do, and it's just one of those things of how can you break the cycle of any of that negative thought and try to think if you can be as cool and calm as much as possible.
Right.
So far, I've done a bunch of podcasts. So if you don't mind, I want to ask you something to see if
Yeah,
it keeps
sure.
going. Because so far it's 100% that it's all been one side. Um, so name me three really great decisions you made when you were your angriest.
None.
All right, so it's
None.
100% stays on. It. Somebody asked me that a couple years ago, and I
Right.
wanted to, like I said, I'm competitive. I wanted to prove them wrong. So I was trying to think of, I was racking my brain for 3 days trying to like, I'm like, there's got to be something.
Yeah.
And I tried more. And the more I tried, I'm like, no, I just kept thinking of more negative stuff that I kept doing. And that was just like a crazy thing to me. I'm like, all right, if we can really self acknowledge, and I think a lot of people can, that you don't make good decisions when you're angry, put the phone away. Don't make decisions in that state. So many of us will make a decision in these heightened states, and then we have to live with the consequences. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's why people get depressed because for a bit you were really not even yourself. Like I always use the term, like we're so much water in our body, like we're 90 something percent water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you look at a stainless steel pot and you're boiling water for rice or pasta, and you've got the water in there, but you haven't started boiling it yet. If you look down, you can see your reflection. It's clear. So you
Yeah.
can see what consistency that is of what the water is. But then when you boil it, you see the bubbles, you don't see your reflection anymore. It's you're in a
Mm.
different state. And when we're angry, that's us. And so
Wow.
I really tried with especially anything on the most basic level of if you can stop it or at least self acknowledge it, then you realize, okay, that's not good. And it just lets you kind of get into that, okay, don't let it progress or keep going for more than a minute, 2 minutes, or however long you're going.
Wonderful. Wow. What a
Mm,
different perspective of that you've shown us, David. That's so
thank you.
interesting. Yeah, because when you're angry, there's literally nothing that is helping you make those right decisions. It's like, they tell when you're drunk, don't text your ex.
Hmm.
Just like that. Like when you're
Yeah.
angry, don't decide anything. And you know how people say, like, sleep on it and then come and tell us an answer. That's
Mhm.
one other thing that I've learned. And I feel like that's another thing where when you're angry, you really want to like get back,
Yeah.
respond, snap, and like do it in the moment. But if you through meditation or through whatever, you realize that, okay, you know what? I'm not even going to respond to it. I'm just
Mhm.
going to keep quiet. But sit with that feeling. I think it's going to take you a long way. But it's so hard. That's the thing.
It falls into similarly like the whole mindset with people pleasing of that like you don't want to be your fully as mad as you can be or whatever because you're afraid of what people are going to do, so you dull it down or something that upsets you and you just kind of bottle it, and like your friends doesn't think it upsets you but internally it is bothering you. So it's all those things as if you can find that. And the wild thing is that I found is if you have true friends who are there for you truly, it's not about anything else, they care about you. you'll find that out really quick is they
Yeah.
don't care about what like the friends that are true friends when you're going through your lows, they want to be there with you. Is it's very convenient when everything's going well to be a friend of somebody or close to someone, but it's when they're going through something. I always tell people like, it's like a badge of honor. If you're a true friend, if you can call someone when you're crying or you're going through something and you don't know how to respond, that's what a friend is that like that then I always say to anybody who I'm close with, I was like, I'll be offended if you didn't call me when you were like that. I was
Yeah.
like, that's what
Yeah.
it's all about. So I always like try to lean into your friend group more because the people who are really there for you, it's like if you start looking at these things, you realize how evident of how true the connection is and how close you guys really are.
Correct. And that kind of lets you imagine that, okay, you don't have to people please all the time because when you
Mhm.
have true friends, that's like, it's not needed at all. In fact, they're going to call you out on it, like your friend did. So, yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much, David. Before we end the show, I want to ask you, is there anything that you would love to share with our audience? Any suggestion, any advice, any thoughts?
Yeah, start writing down if you can get into it. And this is difficult. I'll say it's not the easiest thing to start. Write down what your limiting beliefs are. Anything that it comes through your mind through the day. If you're saying I can't, this is too hard, I'm gonna fail. Any of that type of emotion, start writing it down and try to process why am I saying that? I did that myself, and after 3 days, embarrassingly, I had hundreds of those moments that I wrote down, and I looked at them all on paper. I was like, I can't think like this anymore. So this is a long way of saying it, but I'll close it up shortly here for you. I'm a big believer in manifestation, and I love that that word doesn't have the woo-woo effect that it had 10 years ago. I love that people really do embrace that. I'm a believer that you are manifesting the life that you put out there and what you're doing on a day to day. And if you're thinking negatively 80 to 90% of your day, that's what you're manifesting in your life. So
Correct.
try to find how you can be as happy as you can be internally. What it is, if you can say affirmations to yourself that get you out of a bad mood or something, try to keep yourself in that positive and find how much of the day you can do that and try to grow it a little more a day. Because if you do that, I'm telling you, it's life changing the benefits it will have for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. It was a
Yeah,
pleasure having you on our show. Thank you.
I had a blast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this talk. Hey, everybody, here's a quick reminder to go check out my 30-day burnout renewal journal. And there's some exciting news too that I'm going to share with you guys soon. So stay tuned. Thank you for tuning in for today's episode of Rise and Tell with Sheekha. My upcoming book, Unburnable Ambition, is all about how to chase your biggest goals without losing yourself to burnout. You can now sign up at shikasingh.com/unburnable ambition for early access and launch updates. Until next time, keep growing, keep glowing, and be yourself, and keep your ambition unburnable. Thank you.